Congresswoman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because they're a bunch of war hawks, okay? You originally voted, you ran as an outsider, yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine. You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China. Why are you playing with the lives of American citizens? You're playing with our lives.
There will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you've shown cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against. That's what you've become. You are the establishment, and you are the reason why everybody will end up in a nuclear war unless you choose to stand up right now and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you do that? Yes or no? Okay, simple. Are you going to stop nuclear war? Yes or no? There is no line, because this is bullshit. None of this matters if we're all dead. None of it. You know that. Then let's take it up right now, because this is the only thing that matters. This is the only thing that matters right now. We could be in a nuclear war at any minute, and you continue to fund it. That's what's going on. Why not right now? You're the liar here. Nobody has held you accountable. That's what's happening. And it is time for you to stand up and realize that what you've been saying has been lies. Let your conscience come through for once.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
What's up, Doom Nation, and welcome back. You are listening to another episode of the Two Doom Men podcast. As always, it's Skaggs and yours truly, the Captain. What's up, buddy? We got some guests here tonight.
Yes, sir. We are joined tonight by Jose Vega. You might remember him from some viral videos on Twitter. And he's also a fellow Bronx kid, an activist, a journalist. I invited him on the podcast. You posted another pretty cool video on Twitter last night, and I was like, man, let me just reach out to this guy and see if he wants to come on and talk to us really about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I think you have like a really interesting repertoire and experience with her. So thanks for coming on with us, man. I really appreciate you making some time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I always have time for anyone else who's from the Bronx.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, fellow Bronx
Thank you for
kids,
coming on, man. Yeah.
Always got to keep
sure.
we had on Kiki also was from the Bronx recently. That was pretty awesome.
I'm not a Bronx kid. I don't drink that water. I'm from a little bit further up to Yonkers. So you might know a few Yonkers kids.
I won't talk to you then. I'll just talk to you.
So, Jose, like I said, I've seen a lot of your, we were just talking before we started recording, I've seen a lot of your videos. I've really appreciated some of them. You've really kind of tried to hold AOC to task on certain issues where she seems weird. Let's just put it that way. But let's start, man, with you. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself first. Like, I've seen your videos, but I really don't know that much about you and what it is you do. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I was born in the Bronx. I lived in the city till I was about 5, and then briefly moved to New Jersey with my parents, and then they divorced, and then around when I was like 12 years old, and then came right back to the Bronx. Around the age of 15 or so, I became politically involved with a group, a very controversial group, which I don't know why. And they're called the LaRouche Organization and the Schiller Institute, which was headed up by Lyndon LaRouche. And if you Google Lyndon LaRouche, you get a whole bunch of weird stuff. That he was like a cult leader, that he was extreme left and then turned extreme right. And then you get stuff that call him extreme left and extreme right all at the same time, which is funny because I get called that too. Like if you look at the comments in all my interventions, like it's always somebody calling me some ultra right wing fascist, or someone calling me some like ultra leftist communist loser. It's like I'm neither of those things. But I've been involved with them pretty much since I was about 15 years old or so. And during COVID, but I took time to really just sharpen my axe, as they say. You sharpen your mental axe. So I took up a lot of reading. I took up a lot of studying, just in general, and being aware of what was going on in the world. And then I started the interventions process. That's what I call this process. The interventions are this process of where you basically go to a town hall or you go to a meeting where elected officials are. And when I first started doing these, I didn't think I was going to have to stand up and shout, right? I thought I could ask a question. One of the first interventions that I ever did was actually in 2019 against Adriano Espaillat. And this was done in like November, I think, of 2019. He was doing some kind of veterans thing. And I just stood up and I started saying, listen, the Congress is giving money to Ukrainian Nazis. This was 2019. This is before the war.
Way ahead of the curve, right? Before anybody cared about it for the most part. Sure.
Exactly, yeah.
When you were still allowed to say Nazis were in Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then COVID had happened. And then the first other intervention I did after that was in 2021 of October. Kamala Harris came to the Bronx. She came to I forget where exactly, near Gun Hill Road. They like opened up some YMCA up there, and she came to speak because Jamaal Bowman invited her to go up there and speak. And that is when I became known as the Harris Heckler. That was what the Harris Heckler. That's what the New York Post had called me. And I called out Kamala Harris. She came to talk about Biden's Build Back Better plan, and I just completely shit on it. And that was like one of the first times that something I did had gotten picked up by like news and stuff, but nobody knew it was me. Not in the beginning, at least. I was kind of okay with that. I like the idea that just speaking for the everyman. In fact, if you go on my Twitter, you'll see a picture of me going like this, and I'm wearing a mask. And people thought, oh, I must be some crazy mask guy, Baxter. No, I was wearing a mask because that you had to wear one to be in the room.
Right.
That's all it was, So
before we get too deep into it, why don't you like shout out your Twitter or where anybody can find you, just so we don't put that at the end. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. No, people can find me on Twitter at HoseBTrigga. It's JOSBTRIGGA. Hoseb because Jose was taken, and Trigga because that was my rapper name in high school. Not really, but yeah. But anyway, and people can also find me on YouTube at Declaring Independence. That's the name of our YouTube channel, Declaring Independence. We created that after we confronted AOC because she called us right-wing cultists, and we wanted to be free of labels. I wanted to have a platform where I could talk to literally anyone and not be called a whatever. I just want to talk to people and see what they think. So, but yeah, that's where people can find me, at HoseBTrigga or Declaring Independence. Either way, you'll find me. And then after the Kamala Harris thing, we started a string of interventions. So we did Senator Gillibrand. We asked her about the kill list, the Ukrainian kill list that has some of my friends on it.
Right. Isn't that like if you've spoken out kind of against the war, they will put you on some sort of blacklist, kill list, whatever it is.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of like podcasters aside from just
Are we on it?
I don't think we're that well known yet, but I'd like to see them try too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
They they have there's two kill lists actually. There's the Mirotvorets list, and then there's the Center for Countering Disinformation in Ukraine list. The Center for Countering Disinformation in Ukraine list puts out this list of like top 15 people who are promoting Russian propaganda and you should avoid at all costs. And so like Scott Ritter's on there, and Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who's like one of the leaders of my organization. Well, she was the wife of Lyndon LaRouche, is on that list, as well as Diane Sayre, who's a U.S. Senate candidate who ran against Chuck Schumer and is now running against Kirsten Gillibrand as an independent for U.S. Senate. So I think you guys are New Yorkers, right? You guys are in New York, right?
We were.
Born and raised. I'm up in Connecticut now. Yeah, we left.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, I'll get into it in a minute, but yeah.
Yeah, so, we did Gillibrand on the kill list, and then we did Jamaal Bowman. I did Jamaal Bowman, I should say, and I was still kind of getting my bearings together because at that point I was still just recording audio and then syncing it up with the video of their live stream afterwards. And that was the Jamaal Bowman one was kind of the one that put me on the radar because that one was the first one that went semi-viral in all the circles and like that was the first time Jimmy Dore ever covered an intervention that I did. You know, and that again, that was another one where I didn't think I'd have to get up and shout because Jamaal Bowman was actually with Hakeem Jeffries, and he said, "We're gonna take questions at the end." And then the end came, and then they're like, "Okay, folks, we gotta go." So I stood up, and I was like, "You know, Congressman, you're a hypocrite, okay? Because you say you want to advance the Black cause." But you're funding neo-Nazis, okay? Like the ones who killed, like the one up in Buffalo, okay, who was wearing the Black Sun symbol. Okay, so you know you guys remember this was a Buffalo,
right?
Went into the grocery store.
He was wearing the Sunnerat, or Sonnendat it's called, and
exactly.
It's the same thing that some Ukrainian soldiers have been photographed having as like an arm patch or a chest patch on their gear. Yeah,
exactly. And so what it was the guy who shot up the people at the supermarket was wearing that symbol. And also at the time there was a assassination attempt against the vice president of Argentina, which like for some of your listeners might be like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that, because I had also completely forgotten about that. And the person who tried to shoot the vice president of Argentina had a tattoo on his forearm of the Black Sun symbol. And was found out to have ties to the Azov battalion. So I confronted Jamaal Bowman about that, and then he said, this is why democracy and free speech is so important. Thank you for hearing
I remember this one.
you. You know, I'll talk to you at the end. And at the time, I was still naive. I was like, you promise? And I did talk to him afterwards. And so I said, he gave me a whole lecture like, what was that, man? You could have pulled me to the side and said, Mr. Bowman, we got a problem, blah, blah, blah. And then so I start, giving my spiel. He says, you're not even in my district, man. You Richie Torres, this guy. And I'm like, because I didn't go to Richie Torres, because Richie Torres is just like a straight up neocon. You at least say you stand for something. Right. So go show me you stand for something. And I said, what are we going to do about the Ukrainian neo-Nazis that exist? And he says, this he said, he was like straight out of Kamala Harris's mouth. We're going to continue to do what we said to do on the work we said we're going to do. And then he just walked away from me like, what the fuck does that mean? And Jamaal Bowman's a total idiot. I don't think he's evil. He's just an idiot. Because one of my friends, Liam Cosgrove, who now works for the Gray Zone, like asked him, like, hey, can you tell me about Donetsk and Lugansk? And the congressman's like, I don't know what that is. Educate me. And then Liam says, well, this is the whole reason why the war kind of started, and you like voted to send money to start the war. And Bowman's like, I can't keep track of every vote.
You mean your job? Yeah.
That really grinds my gears. What you just told me about him too, because I mean, I've said this a million times on the show. Like, these are same people constantly preaching about democracy and protecting democracy and this and that, but then you, a constituent, to one extent or another, wants to ask the guy a question, and he doesn't want to answer it in public. He wants to answer it quietly off to the side. Why? Just in case he gives a bad answer,
off the
no
record,
one else could hear it. I mean, part of democracy, isn't it, like voicing your opinion to your elected representative?
That's a threat to democracy.
He's also a congressman. Like that. Like, this is my problem with these federally elected officials, right? They can't give me that, because they told me this before. Well, we can't help you because you're not technically our constituent. Right. These people make decisions that affect the entire country. This isn't a state assemblyman, or this isn't some, local,
like your town, right, like comptroller member or something.
Yeah, right. It's not like I'm even going to the mayor asking him to deal with Ukrainian. I'm going to a congressman who voted to send money to Ukraine. Okay, World War III affects all of us.
Everyone.
So I don't want to hear that bullshit. Well, I can't specifically help you. It's just not. It's just not true. It's not true at all, actually. So, anyway, that happened, and then 2 weeks later was the very infamous intervention that I still occasionally see pop up to this day, which is the AOC intervention. So this was October 12th or 13th or so. I think it was 13th or the 12th, because my ex-girlfriend at the time broke up with me literally a day after that happened.
Damn. Yeah. Threw a wrench in your plans right before you had your big moment.
Yeah. No. So no. Like, the thing happened, it went viral, and then she broke up with me.
Was it related to you doing that?
She swears it wasn't, but I think it was.
Sorry if that was a personal question, but
I was a very good boyfriend, for the record. I don't care what
I believe you.
But anyway, besides the point, it was either October 12th or October 13th. My friend Kynan and I, and then a third friend who to this day and forever will remain nameless because he's like so freaked out. Like, our cameraman, I'll call him cameraman. So my friend Kynan and I decided to go to AOC's town hall. And what was so interesting about that day is that Kynan actually had to go to work that day. And I said, nah, man. No. Because he lives in Queens.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the Bronx. Right? And so this thing was happening like north, like deep in the Bronx. But I said, you're going to call off work and you're going to come to me. And he really didn't want to. I was like, no, you got to come. So he's like, okay, fine. But if I go, I have to go first. Because he wanted, and what we were thinking that day was, okay, if you get the microphone first, here's what you say. And then if I get the microphone after you, here's what I'll say. But when we found out that the questions were all scripted, like, you had to write down your question first.
Submit them. This way they can vet them.
And then the staff will pass her questions, And if it were the case that, the other thing was, like, when it came up with the Q&A, people whose questions were written and read out loud were also given the microphone. So I thought, well, why have this third step? Why not just let people
line up? They needed to vet them. Yeah.
Exactly. They need to vet the questions, which is the stupidest thing you could do.
They also want to probably put on a show that it isn't like that too. Yeah. Like, they wanted, there's some sort of illusion of it being an actual Q&A.
So kind of was just like, fuck this. So there was a very good opportunity to intervene, because in the middle of questions, they're like, okay, we're going to read an email question now. And kind of thought that was appropriate because we didn't want to cut anybody off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so an email question, we're not cutting off a person. So Kynan just started it saying, Congresswoman, you're playing with our lives, whatever the hell he said. So then he gets told to sit down, or I can't remember if he gets told to sit down or he gets dragged out. But and then AOC says something like, we need to be respectful of our neighbors. And that's when I start and I say, there will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb, okay? You voted to send arms and weapons to Ukrainian neo-Nazis. You're a coward. And then people get on me for this, because then I said Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party. And people forget that at the time, Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And, I'm not even like a Tulsi stan. I was just saying, Tulsi Gabbard said, "Look, I don't know what the Democratic Party has become, but this is a war party. Now I'm leaving."
Ooh, that
That's
must have
that.
really grind her gears for you to have brought up Tulsi.
Mm-hmm.
She's really
Oh, yeah.
annoyed a lot of the Democrat politicians.
Yeah, she was, and I'll tell you why. So I do my whole spiel right now, and then I get dragged out. I post a video. It goes like mega viral. I remember, you know, waking up and I was like, what the fuck, a million views? And I really didn't think about the effect that video was going to have. But anyway, so 24 hours after, Mehdi Hassan, you guys know Mehdi
Oh, I
Hassan?
know who he is. Yes, I'm very well familiar with him. Yeah.
He's like some MSNBC stooge. He's like the figurehead of.
Yeah,
of
he's like the pro-regime talking point guy who toes every line that needs to be towed and never has a
Mhm.
critical thought ever.
Yeah. So he said something like, "This is the stupidest and most incoherent thing. I can't believe they're talking about being anti-war, but they won't condemn Putin." AOC responded to that by saying, "And the worst part was that they were shouting over a deaf constituent." You see? And oh yeah, because there's a very famous line where I say to AOC, "Why won't you answer the question?" She says, "Because you are being rude."
Rude.
Yeah.
I remember at the time too, people were also sharing clips of her talking about how you need to like there's essentially like some version of like no justice, no peace, and like you need to like be up in people's faces for like things you're passionate about that hurt like working class people. But then you went and did that to her, and she's singing a different tune of like, no, you have to be
Of
respectful
course.
and you shouldn't shout. I mean, if your concern, the thing you were talking about, is not, at least in my opinion, the most important thing in the world going on right now, the possibility of nuclear war. But then no, you can't, yeah, you have to be quiet about it.
We can't make
Yeah,
her look bad now. Come on.
no, it really did succeed because there were slanderous articles that came out in March of this year, written by The Nation, which is just Blue Anon stuff. It's like QAnon, but for like liberals and
Yeah.
Democrats. And so they were writing a whole hit piece on my organization and Diane. But even they admitted that the interventions this is like an exact quote, that the interventions made people like AOC and Ilhan Omar look like hippie punching warmongers.
Because they are.
Because they are. And but anyway, right. So the whole deaf constituent thing was a lie. She got called out on that. And also the fact that she responded brought more attention to it. And so we immediately corrected, was like, first of all, there was no deaf constituent in the audience or deaf constituent asking a question. There was an email that came in, and people can go back to the stream and see this. An email that came in that said, how do we make politics more accessible for people with disabilities like those who are deaf or hard of hearing? That was the question we interrupted. And as Jimmy Dore said on his show, if there was a deaf constituent talking in the audience, would they really know if
they didn't hear you.
started shouting?
That's
they would have just kept going.
Yeah, right. They would have just kept talking, right? They would have known they were interrupted. Yeah.
So what type of backlash outside of like anything personally, or because like you said, the cameraman guy is freaked out about how much attention it got. And I could see, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I wish I could, run up on these politicians. No YouTube, I'm not threatening anybody. And like, voice my opinion. And like funny enough, I ran into Nancy Pelosi at a Metallica concert. And like, yeah, it was what was the
global citizen concert this last September, I think it was. Yeah. We were there and we happened to cross right in front of Nancy Pelosi,
and she just happened to be like 10 feet away from me. And like I'm political, and we got the show and all that stuff. But like when I'm out with my friends and Metallica concert, the last thing I'm thinking on my mind is like, what would I ask Nancy Pelosi right now? And like, I just got out like, hey, Nancy. And like 2 security guards turned and looked at me, and I was like, you know what? This ain't worth getting thrown out. I just wanted to be like, fuck you. Like I couldn't come up with anything, but like, I just wasn't prepared. But So, like, what type of backlash have like you seen, in your personal life since this? I mean, you
To be
already said your
fair,
girl left you and all this shit.
to be fair, my friend who was the cameraman, like he didn't know what he was signing up for.
Okay.
So he's trying to work on his academic career. He's got like thesis papers coming out and
Yeah.
shit. So academia is like he's trying to make it in that kind of
Mm-hmm.
world. So I'm not gonna step on his game.
Yeah, you're not gonna ruin
to,
them.
to answer your question on the backlash stuff, the AOC one was only net positive in my opinion.
Okay. Very good.
Because it does get bad. not well, but you'll see. Like yes, my girl did leave me, but there were a number of different backlashes that it's kind of layered. The very first immediate one was this wave of being hit with fame because I had jumped up to like 25,000 followers or 12,000 followers. And at the time, I was being talked about all over the place. I was doing interviews left and right. And I was always doubting myself as to whether or not I'm accurately portraying what I'm trying to say or not. And I was hit with a wave of depression. It was really bad. On top of losing a job, not because of any forces, but because at the time I was taking care of my grandfather, and the state will pay you to take care of a relative. But he was already in a nursing home by when October came. And so, I was depressed. I was broke. I was girlfriendless.
I'd yell at AOC too. So yeah.
And that was pretty rough on my mental health. And like, I tried to do things to try and like, revive. And what helped actually was seeing other people starting to do what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting to see other people like pick up the baton and just go. And that really, really inspired me a lot. And the second ramification that came was in February when I confronted Hakeem Jeffries. I was switching to a new job. And I confronted Hakeem Jeffries and I got a call from Capitol Police in D.C. Okay. Why the hell would D.C. police call me in New York about something that happened in New York? And so they called me and they asked me, like, what the hell is, I didn't say what the hell, but they were like, so were you trying to hurt the congressman? Were you trying to, what was your goal there? And I was just like, you could talk to this person. We have people in our organization who handle all legal stuff. But then turns out the new job I got were like, actually, we're not going to bring you in. So, thankfully I posted about that and people donated then, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, some organizations could be scared, right, of people who are voice their opinions politically. They won't want like the potential backlash that comes for someone like that. Yeah, that's one of the I hate that about society. I get it to some extent, but I hate that as well.
No, yeah, it's that I think is probably the worst of it that you could probably see. I mean, the support of people, like people sometimes donate whenever I do these things, and like that has been a real lifeline for me. I mean, I've been pretty much scraping by doing gig jobs and stuff, and that's why I'm hoping the YouTube thing and the Patreon thing works. But I've never been arrested. I've never had handcuffs on me. And overall, there's just been a lot more support than there has been negative effects, and working with other anti-war activists and collaborating and, being very secure with my new role of like, okay, well, people see me as like some, figurehead of an anti-war movement. Like, you think you're ready to take on the slings and arrows, and it's, man, do they fucking hurt, man?
Right, and you don't know what that's going to be like until you're actually in the moment. Let me just say, man, I appreciate what you went through. To me, what you did was fucking heroic. In her district, stood up to her and made a good point because it was a good point. And we've talked a lot on the show about like there's no good leaders anymore. Just for whatever reason, sometimes leadership just kind of comes to the right person at the right time. So what you did was be a leader, in my opinion, in some sort of anti-war movement way, and that's something that we are lacking right now in the world, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
I think we are seeing we've covered a lot of what Tucker Carlson has been doing lately, and he's referenced it a lot. Like if you talk out about the wars, that is a big no-no. That is like the issue that they all agree on for some weird reason. We know what the real reason is. And if you
Money.
oppose it, it doesn't matter if you're even Tucker. You will get axed, and
Yeah.
people will come with you with the arrows, like you were saying before.
uh, well, exactly. And I mean, I have a philosophy, which is that I believe a great leader makes other leaders. And so I'm trying to inspire other people. I mean, we've been holding classes on how to do the interventions and stuff. The people that you saw in that picture with me are all like new recruits. Or in the so the latest thing I did, going to her office with the war poster.
War, yeah.
Yeah, those are all like fresh recruits, people who are like, put me in the fight, coach. I
Good.
want to,
Yeah.
get in this. And a lot of congressmen have gotten very smart with their events now. They are only letting in like verified constituents who have not caused problems before. So like Kynan and I and a few others are now blacklisted from going into AOC's town hall.
It's
Yeah.
amazing that just you cause the problem, poof, First Amendment rights gone.
Well, they have to defend
your right
democracy.
to protest is gone. Just we're not going to let you in. All for the like they're saying to protect democracy, but it's really just to save face. Really just to save face at the end of the day. And
to be honest with you, man, too,
pathetic.
like the history of this country going back to, let's say World War I. I mean, if you were an anti-war activist, you were treated like shit. I'm sure before that as well, but it really has been the thing. This country will talk about freedom of speech, or at least the state, the government will. But then if you speak up against a war, they will ostracize you. I mean, this war that we're talking about right now, Zelensky has postponed elections because they're in a war. And I've tried to make
you can't have democracy.
Yeah, I've
you have a war,
to
man.
make that point to people. Well, like, well, what about the Ukrainians? Like, what if they want to maybe a change in leadership? What if they don't like how Zelensky is running this thing, right? The war. Maybe they want to end the war. Maybe they don't think Zelensky is managing the battle strategy good, and they want a change of leadership there. But now they have no say, and that's somehow defending democracy.
Yeah, that's a promotion of democracy.
Wild people can't see through that hypocritical, worldview.
Oh, of course. I'm sure the Ukrainians are very happy with their, president who just focuses on everything they do for them every day. So
you should start asking, these congressmen and women, like, how much are you making from military contracts to support these wars?
Right.
Yeah, I want like numbers, because
how much is the military?
Everybody's got to be making a cut, to be in favor of all this. Somebody's making a cut somewhere,
Well, this stuff's actually public. Ro Khanna is the biggest one who makes tons of money from insider stock trading next to Nancy Pelosi. And Dan Crenshaw also. Yeah, Dan Crenshaw proudly takes MIC money. He proudly takes stock money, no problem whatsoever. I mean, these guys are like this with Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. You gotta. Well, people always say you gotta take the money out of politics, but like, what does that exactly look like? Me personally, I think there's a top-down solution to everything. The fish rots from the head down. And I think what you need to replace the entire Congress. You need to replace the entire government. I don't know what you guys believe in terms of like how much or little or whatever government you need. I do believe you do need like a strong government that people can actually trust, not this bullshit you have in Washington, right? You don't have actual representation. You don't have people who even. I'll give you a good example. You guys know Maxwell Frost? He's like a new freshman congressman.
Yes.
He's Florida. He's only 26, 27 years old. And he was he won because I think something like either his classmates were gunned down or he knew people who were gunned down in a school shooting. So he's like, I want to get rid of the guns. I want to, be a congressman so I can do something about it. It's like, okay. When Matt Gaetz presented a bill that was going to take our troops out of Syria, because Matt Gaetz said, our troops are illegally in Syria. We shouldn't have them. And for people who may not know, I mean, the United States should not be in Syria. The amount of war crimes we've committed in Syria, we faked like a whole gas, chemical warfare thing, right?
That video was so staged. Yeah.
We have starved children in Syria. We've killed children because of our own soldiers doing it. And so Matt Gaetz brings this bill and he says, listen, we got to get our soldiers out of there. We got to do it. And this will order the soldiers out. So, the usual suspects vote yes, like AOC votes, yeah, let's get our troops out. Bowman votes, yeah, let's get our troops out. But, Mr. Frost here, who believes that we should, ban guns and stuff, says, no, I think our troops are fine in Syria. I'm okay with a 12-year-old Syrian child being shot in the face, as long as it's not happening here in Florida. Now, am I supposed to believe that Maxwell Frost is some deranged psychopath, okay, who's completely okay with war? No. First of all, his parents are very well connected with politics and politicians. And secondly, a guy like that doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's a Democrat, ran as a Democrat. He's being told what to vote for. He's being told what to say. He has no real thoughts of his own. It's just, what do you want me to vote? Yeah? Okay, yeah, we're voting, yeah. That's all
essentially
it is.
like a proxy, right?
That's essentially 99% of all your congressmen right now. You have no real representation, and people need to take back their government. That's the kind of like thing I've been pushing right now is take back your government. Now, I'm not saying people should all run for office, but there are 435 congressional districts. Can you find one person to do what I did in each of those districts to their respective congressperson? That's the way to do it.
Right.
Put the pressure on there.
Be a thorn in the side of those people. I want to get back real quick to AOC specifically. We've been super critical of her on this show. And
she's one of our
and
on a scale of 1 to 10, how hot?
Yeah.
I would date her if she was single. That'd be funny.
I mean, she thinks everyone wants to date her, right? So I feel personally responsible because I left the Bronx in 2018, and one of the last things I did was vote for AOC when she won her primary against Crowley. Right, so I'm sorry to everybody still down there. It's partially my fault, but so just to fill you in, like I was born in the Bronx and raised up until 2018. When I left and moved up here to Connecticut, I was really like a Bernie guy, and I my positions have shifted tremendously over COVID and things like that. I think I've had an awakening, and I'm now like a libertarian in the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. But that's neither here nor there. But when I saw AOC back then, I saw like young upstart, kind of like opposing the establishment. Joe Crowley was this long time Chuck Schumer style guy in there that really did nothing for anybody. And I thought, like, hey, she makes some good points on things. She seems anti-war. She's young, fresh, like get her in there. So change some things for the better. Put everything else aside, all the other issues that I'll disagree with her aside. The one thing I thought she would have stayed true on as a liberal is being anti-war. Now, to see her literally endorse Biden the same day that he approves the cluster bombs going to Ukraine is monumental to me all these years later. I know she's been now essentially pro-war, but in your opinion, man, what happened to AOC that she has gone from this, at least being portrayed as this like anti-establishment upstart, to now being the heir to Nancy Pelosi or something like that?
Yes, I've talked about this several times. So I'll give you the whole enchilada of what I think happened to AOC. There was a period, is what I believe, and people tell me otherwise, that she was always CIA, that she worked for Ted Kennedy as an intern. I
I've
think she
heard
was
that.
genuine. I think she was genuine. I do. I do think that when she was campaigning, she was for real. I do think that when she won against Joe Crowley, she probably didn't think she was going to win, and she did. And that was a real upset. People forget that Joe Crowley was like some establishment dude that
Right.
nobody thought, was going
Would
to
ever
ever
lose.
leave. Yeah. And so when he did, that was like a big wake up call, like, oh shit. So what did that mean? That meant that they needed to call in the big guns and they just needed to corrupt her. That was it. And she was susceptible to it because she had Bernie on her side, who was like really promoting the hell out of her. And if you remember, AOC was on like Glenn Greenwald show saying we got to free Assange. We're gonna
Yes.
we're gonna force the vote. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. Blah 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 blah. What it became apparent was when she was doing interviews. People may not remember this in 2018 when she had won the primary but hadn't won the general yet. But she was on. She was like just getting like roasted on like interviews and like talk shows because she didn't know what the fuck she was talking about. Like she was like, "Oh, I don't know. I haven't read up on." They were making her look dumb on purpose. They were wearing her down, and it showed that she didn't really know what she was talking about. And so they switched the approach on her, and they said, "You know what? Let's not go after her. She's susceptible." Because the problem with having passion and no idea, or having no ideological background or no ideological fortitude, is that you become very susceptible to when someone says, "Hey, listen, I understand your passion. You want to do something, but what does that something look like? You're just one vote in Congress after all. Let me teach you how the system works, kid." So slowly, they started wearing down on her like that. And it came to the point where it's like, okay, if I want Medicare for all, uh, maybe I just need to vote yes on this one bill that I don't want to vote yes for, but it'll put me in the good graces of the Democratic Party. So over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? And she's been bitch slapped by the Democratic Party over and over again, telling her, no, you're not allowed to be a dissident. We're gonna run someone against you. We'll stop funding your campaign if you don't play ball with us. And over time, she just became the thing where she's just like, fuck it. So what it was she had to make many moral concessions in order to get by when you're swimming in the swamp, right? She thought she could shake things up. The swamp swallowed her whole and she became a swamp monster now. And so now she swims around the swamp thinking, I know how to play the game, but the game is playing her. And she's forever a stooge. Every time every time she votes against the establishment or against a bill that the establishment supports, it's only when they're in the minority. It's only when they know their no votes will not mean anything.
Right. We've
And
covered that on the show
We,
before, how they've
the squad, yeah.
they have this scam going where they kind of like exchange votes, even within the squad itself. So like a handful of them will vote for a thing and the other handful will vote against it. This way
Whoever needs good press.
Right. They could always have this appearance of them trying to stand up for like progressive values or something like that. Meanwhile, they're making sure whatever it is the establishment needs to get done gets done. They don't rock the boat too much. Yeah.
Exactly. And
she's just a good-looking fool. She's a good-looking John Fetterman.
yeah, I don't know what she's doing with that man. I could fix her. I could fix her.
I think you could.
Give me-
She needs a good, solid anti-war voice in her life.
No. Me and her at a bar, we'll just hash it out, couple drinks. I'll bring her back to my place. We'll read some of the books I have on my shelf, and then I'll fix her. I'll fix her.
I hope so.
You get
man.
another call from DC police.
She does have, yeah, you will, without a doubt. You will be getting a call from Capitol Police. I mean, she does have a very wide audience, I guess you could say, right? Like she has a lot of followers on Twitter and whatnot, and she's kind of got this, I don't know, like she's got this platform that's been given to her, which is very polarizing to some extent or another. So it's it really is disappointing looking back at it.
Well, that's
she could have been a real positive voice.
She's got
maybe
this,
not for everything I believe in anymore, but at least for against war. And one more point I want to make. I saw her recently, I think it was today, comment on Israel Palestine, and she seems to still have a pretty solid, at least, opinion on that. It's not perfect, but I tend to fall on the side that Israel's pretty fucked up in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And it seems like on that issue, they're more, she's not perfect again, but she's a little bit more on the right side of that issue. But when it comes to like every other issue in Ukraine, especially like Ukraine, she's not. She's like she's a neocon, essentially.
Well, that's because the Democratic Party is so firm on supporting Israel that her not supporting Israel is just like the most like pathetic like thing. Like, for example, this resolution that was just passed about condemning anti-Semitism and supporting Israel, 421 votes for yes, we condemn anti-Semitism and we reaffirm our commitment to Israel, and only 9 votes against, which the 9 votes was the Squad, right? So the Squad's going to take this and be like, see, we're against it all, you know. Yeah. Well, you'll notice that the only times they ever speak out against it is either when they're pressured to, in the case of Pramila Jayapal, when she was confronted by activists in the back who were all calling her, I forgot what they were calling her, but they were like asking her to denounce Israel, and then she did, and then she had to issue an apology, like, I didn't mean it, I'm sorry. And then she also voted to condemn anti-Semitism and support Israel. But, you know, these guys know that they can get away with not supporting Israel. In fact, like, I think you guys might remember this when she voted no to fund the Iron Dome, and then Nancy Pelosi ran over to her, talked to her, and she's like, at least switch your vote to president. And then she started crying. I was like, okay, I'll switch over to president. You see, come on.
No backbone. None.
No.
It doesn't even take an elaborate, to win her over. It's Nancy just come over there and give her a stern talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, what were you going to say before? Sorry, I cut you off before.
What I was going to say before was she has this platform because of the NPCs. She's this young, good-looking woman who people had the same sentiment of her that you did back in 2018, that like, oh, she's young, she's anti-war, she can make a change, she's going to go in there. But like, people have their heads so far up their ass that they still follow her and don't recognize that she's not even coming close to what she ran on. You know, this is why she still has that platform, just brainwashed NPCs.
Sure. I think that's definitely a thing. That's Jose. So that's really what I thought was so heroic about what you did, because I was feeling a little bit black-pilled at the time around the whole situation. But then here comes someone in the district to yell at her about how this position makes no sense. So again, I just got to compliment you. I thought that was heroic, and it was a white pill to some extent. Like, no, everyone in the Bronx is not an idiot. They have not forgotten like what it's like to be anti-war. There are some people, at least down there still, that are like willing to stand up for like progressive, real liberal progressive values, or at least anti-war values. I don't know exactly where you fall on the political spectrum anymore, Jose. Like, are you a right-wing domestic terrorist or whatever it is they want to make you out to be?
I am whatever the hell will stop nuclear war.
Fair enough.
That's what I am immediately. I mean,
you're gonna collect all your principles and vote accordingly.
Fuck voting to any of the options. Excuse me. Maybe let me be clearer. Let me not be reacting so emotionally. I do understand that you have to vote every 4 years, no problem, or every 2 years, I guess. But I genuinely don't believe we'll make it to 2024 if we don't do something about the situation we're in now. You know, I have on good authority that the Russians and the Chinese are looking at the citizens of the United States because they're like, they've given up on the government. They've given up completely to think that they can ever reason or find a bargain out of the current administration that's in now. They do not think it possible to actually find a resolution with the United States. So they're looking at the United States citizen And I know for a fact they've seen the interventions. Their officials have shared it on Twitter or on, whatever the fuck, WeChat in China. Somebody sent me a link to like ByteDance, which is the Chinese version of TikTok.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Whoa,
the
that must be a little oh shit moment, being like, wow, I'm going viral in China now.
yeah, China. But
China.
my intervention had 16 million views just on ByteDance in China, right? And then the Chinese people were saying like, "What? Not all Americans are brainwashed?" Like,
Right.
that's what the Russian government is looking at right now, deciding whether or not they're gonna go, be like, fuck it, we're just gonna go full on force with Ukraine, and the last red line's been crossed, or can the citizenry pull something out? That's
Yeah.
It's literally dependent upon every single citizen right now in the United States to tell the entire world. Because that's one thing I want to stress, is that the interventions don't just go viral in the United States, they've gone viral all around the world. Okay, I've seen the AOC one subtitled in 9 different languages, as was the last one I did with the Columbia School of Journalism. They've been subtitled into like, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Italian, French, Danish, German, Greek, even. Like, I've seen them go viral. I've seen commentators in YouTube channels and other languages, start talking and reporting on it. Why? Because the world is tired of seeing an imperial United States, and when they see something, it's like what you just talked about, a white pill moment, where they're like, wait a minute, there's something happening in the U.S. Maybe we can be optimistic.
Yeah, I really think there's something to what you're saying here, man. We've talked a lot about Ukraine the last few episodes. We had on a Russian expat on, Casimir. He gave us his take on the whole thing going on there. And I also listened to Colonel Douglas McGregor on Patrick Bet-David's show. I thought he made a couple of really good, interesting points. And if you just look at like the battle lines, the Russians haven't gone anywhere. They've really just kind of dug in and seem to be waiting around and letting the Ukrainians throw themselves against their defensive line and whatnot. And if you're listening to what Colonel Douglas McGregor said, Putin doesn't want to like kill everyone in Ukraine and just steamroll the place. He might be biding some time, thinking that he can work with the West again in the future. So perhaps he does see a little bit of dissent here amongst the American people as a way in the future that like they'll put somebody in charge who's willing to negotiate with me again, and we'll be able to like make a peace and work together in the future. Maybe that's why. And then in Russia, there was like a little bit of dissent where they're like, no, we could finish them off now in Ukraine, throw everything we have against them, and let's just get this over with. The West is never going to come back to the table with us. So, I mean, that kind of narrative is not spoken about often because it kind of makes Putin sound like the rational one in the House.
And we can't have that we can't have that to have democracy.
But I think there might be something to that, to be honest with you.
I don't disagree with you, but also, as Jose just said, like, we have to wait until 2024, the election, and that is much longer than we think it is. We're closer to 2023 November, but it's still a whole nother year, and that's a lot of time for Joe Biden to fuck shit up.
You're right.
Yeah, exactly. And even after November, even after, okay, let's say Biden is definitely gone, right? And we get, I don't know, Donald Trump or RFK Jr. or Cornel West, whoever the fuck, right? That's still December.
Yeah.
And
3 weeks of January.
The lame duck session, right?
Yeah.
That they can really fuck. The scariest thing is that there is a clause in the Constitution that if there is an emergency befalling on the United States, the president has full authority to take control indefinitely as long as the emergency is over. That was the plan with Bush for 9/11. The whole idea with 9/11 was to create an emergency where Bush could have the authority to be basically like a dictator. And they accomplished it. The Patriot Act was the biggest one, right? The ability to spy on every single American and start a war in Iraq because, they wanted to kill his father or some bullshit, right?
Yeah. And again, like just going back to what I was saying before about Colonel Douglas McGregor, that is kind of one of the things he said. He did say, like, I don't think we're going to make it to 2024. maybe there is something to that. I don't know. Maybe he's being a little bit dramatic, but maybe there is something to that. We're like, I don't know here if like the American people start turning the corner here and we start getting towards, like a little bit of a more representative government for real. Is the empire
think of what the establishment's going to do?
Yeah,
or
is the empire going to just go down without a fight?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
To kind of answer your question a bit about like what am I was also a Bernie bro back in 2015 because it was like I was becoming of age to be able to vote. 2016 was the first time I voted, and when it came out that Hillary Clinton had conspired with the DNC to sabotage Bernie, I was pretty pissed off. I was more pissed off that Bernie didn't decide to like call her out on it. Nah,
took the payday.
He still bent over and said, "Yeah, please fuck me. Go ahead. Yeah, I endorse Hillary Clinton for president."
He took the payday,
and so I decided, fuck it, I'm going to vote for Trump. Like that was my kind of pivot. I said, you know what, I'm going to become a Trump voter. And people always ask me like, well, wait a minute, but you say you're not a Trump supporter. It's like, yeah, I know I'm not a Trump supporter.
Distinction that
but
could be
fuck
made
Hillary.
There, of course. Yeah.
It was a fuck Hillary vote, not I endorsed Donald. And I did it twice too. It was like a fuck Joe Biden vote also, right? I have a different philosophy now than I did when because I was like 18 when I voted for Trump the first time, and then I was 20, 21, 22 when I voted for him the second time. So I've grown a lot since then. I'll be 25 in September. Now I'll vote for whoever I genuinely think should be president. If that means it's some nobody third-party candidate, I don't even like Cornell. But if it's some nobody third-party candidate, if I think I should be president, I will write my own name down. I mean, that's how every American should be thinking. It's not who I think has a better chance of. It shouldn't be voting against. It should be who do I think should actually run the country.
Yeah,
if that happens to be, my uncle, I'll write his name.
Yeah, we got to start voting based on, you have principles A, B, C, and D, and candidate A's principles are A, B, and C. He or she has the most principles that you align with, and that's the route you're probably going to have to take instead of just voting along party lines like a brainwashed mule.
Yeah, I'll never forget. Maj Touré said, like, when do you stop eating shit from candidates? This is kind of why I've found my home at the Libertarian Party. They're gonna, at least for me, they're gonna produce probably the candidates I agree with the most and the best candidates. That doesn't mean I might not vote for Trump if he is the candidate or whatever, but like we had Mike Dermott on the show. I agree with the principle of like we need to actually what we have to do is just start supporting the best person for the job, not the person that's like presented to us at the turn and he's like the lesser of two evils and this is the most important election in the history of elections, which is the line every single time.
I actually kind of like RFK Jr. and what he's had
I like him too.
On.
Yeah.
But I before we end off here because I got to get going soon. I want to just plug there's an August 6th rally happening in front of the United Nations. So that's, I guess, in like 2.5 weeks from now, followed by a concert. It's free for anybody. It's a mass peace rally. We have something like 20 international organizations who are sponsoring this thing. Jimmy Dore is about to start promoting it too. We're hoping to get him as a speaker, but we'll see. We'll see. And I'll be speaking. Scott Ritter will be a speaker. We have some other high-profile speakers I can't think of right now. This will be August 6th. There's information on my Twitter profile. People can, at Hosby Trigger. Speaking of libertarians, Angela McArdle kicked ass when it came to the Rage Against the War Machine rally that I got to speak at also. And, the Rage Against the War Machine party has endorsed also this August 6th rally. Nick Brana will be speaking too. I think Angela will be speaking. I'm not sure if she will or not. So take that with a grain of salt. But yeah.
Cool. I'll put it on the calendar, man. Maybe I'll try and come down
there
and support you guys and get involved in it. I like that. Idea. So, Jose, thank you, man. For Cap, any other questions or anything before we?
No, man. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you telling the story to everybody. And like you said, we got to find more people like you in every district
and inspire more people like you, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. I again, thank you for coming on, bro, and thank you for what you've done. I truly mean it. What you did was fucking heroic, and what you continue to do is heroic. Even the poster. When I didn't see the poster actually come from you, the war poster. It just popped up somewhere and it resonated with me immediately. Like I got it immediately when I saw the roar. I'm probably gonna use it to make the thumbnail for this episode, if that's all right with you. But
it was made by my friend Greg. Yeah, like I told him, like I have this idea, but I don't know how to use Photoshop. He was like, "Oh, here you go, man." He like kicked ass on it completely. So
that's awesome.
They say, right? Picture's worth 1,000 words. So
exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for everything, man, and thanks for coming on with us again.
Of course, no problem.
All right, Jose, thank you. Skaggs, thank you, man. Doom Nation, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Get out there and be inspired like our buddy Jose over here. And on that note, adios, Doom Nation.